Welcome to CPG Therapy. I am Michelle Sheely, your host, your queen of culture, helping you take the curd out of your culture. Today, we are going to be talking about imposter syndrome, and I am super excited about the guests that I am bringing on. I just want to acknowledge that CPG Therapy took a little bit of a break. For all of you that asked how I am doing great. I had a full knee replacement for those of you that don't know, and it was long overdue. I could barely walk anymore. It was that bad. I mean, I was in downtown Seattle walking to lunch with Noah Smith from PCC Market, and I did a 1.5 and landed on my back on the sidewalk in downtown Seattle. And I just remember Noah looking over me with his eyes as big as saucers, like, how the heck did that happen? Because we were just walking. And I looked up at him and I said, it's time for me to get my full knee replacement now. And I called, and lo and behold, I have a new knee now. Anyway, I'm glad I'm back. It's one of the most painful surgeries that anybody can have, but I'm back. I got 2 legs to stand on now, and I'm ready to do interviews again. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, and I'm super excited about my guest that is coming on the show to discuss his vulnerabilities with imposter syndrome. My guest is the refrigerated buyer for New Seasons, and he's going to go on his own adventure very soon. But please welcome Robert Johnson. Robert, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Michelle? I am doing fantastic. Thank you. Hope you're
Good,
doing well.
good. Well, I'm doing well. It's good to see you. And you have a new adventure that you're doing. I know. Do you want to talk about that at all? Or are we going to leave that for another time?
Ooh, should I be a man of mystery? Um, yeah, I mean, I'm
Well,
fine with talking about
it's not
it.
really a mystery. It's all over LinkedIn. So,
Well, I
yeah.
mean, that's part
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just part
So,
of it, Michelle.
yeah, it's just a little part of it. Well, you can be a man of
Yeah.
mystery, but is it okay
All
if
right.
we talk about the fact that you are leaving not LinkedIn, sorry, you're leaving New Seasons and you're gonna go start an adventure on your own that you've been working on for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I'm wrapping up 15 years at New Seasons on Wednesday. And Christmas Eve, it's actually, funny fact, is the first day I started with the company. So it is literally going full circle at 15 years.
And what a great run, 15 years at New Seasons. I mean, it's such a iconic and great store in the Pacific Northwest, but it's just known throughout the country. And the fact that you were there and made the contribution that you did is amazing. But I'm really excited to see what you're going to do next and talk about kind of get into the topic that we're talking about today is imposter syndrome and how you've come from where you were to where you are now, and you are one of the men that have experienced it. 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some time in their life, and women actually experience it more than men, or
Oh,
maybe that's for kind of what the data tells us, is that women experience it more than men. However, men experience it too. So, or
sure. I'm
maybe
kind
men
of
are just
surprised at
lying
that.
on, maybe they're just lying on the data. They're just don't
Yeah.
want to admit it. I don't know.
Well, the rate seems a little low, to be honest, that it's only 70%. I would guess it would be closer to 90 or 100.
Yeah, I don't see how you couldn't experience imposter syndrome at some time in your life unless you're just so overly sure of yourself in such an inauthentic way.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, because I
We're a
can't
little,
imagine that like 100% of people wouldn't have experienced it at some point or another. So okay, so today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, and I'm just going to define what I have found on the Google and the web, what imposter syndrome is. Okay, and it's just such a great week to talk about imposter syndrome too, because it's the week of Christmas, and who we are is the biggest imposter that we know is Santa Claus. It's a family show, so if your kids are listening, turn it down. But yeah, so Anyway, so the definition of imposter syndrome is an external experience characterized by a set of beliefs and thoughts which stop people from assimilating their achievements, praises, and successes despite having evidence to the contrary. They tend to minimize and undermine their own success, which I have done. I know you have done, many of us have done, and it's something that definitely we do, especially in CPG, is, we get promoted, there's a lot at stake, and we start to doubt ourselves, I can't do that, or oh my God, what if I get fired? And just that committee that I talk about, the committee in your head just starts
Yeah.
going off. So when did imposter syndrome first show up for you?
Well, so, there's probably plenty of times that it's come up pretty early on in my career, but the most memorable time for me has been this transition from, moving from a store level employee to a merchandiser and then to the category manager. And, honestly, it was, I remember sitting in those first, I don't know how many meetings with brands and brokers that have a lot more experience than me in what was happening during the meeting. And, it honestly kicked in there, probably most prevalent, or at least the most relevant to this conversation, because they would ask me, like it would be our first meeting with a brand or a broker. And I'm being asked the question, like, what do you think's best for your category right now? I don't know. Like I can act confident and I can, be just use critical thinking to kind of make assumptions and good forecasts. But at the time I didn't know what the downstream effect was. So it was really hard for me to answer that and then have people look to me as being like this expert of the category when I just started.
Do you think that any of the brokers or the people that you were working with, let's just say like brokers, right? Or any of the manufacturers, do you think that they may have kind of saw into you that maybe you were inexperienced and kind of bulldozed you or took advantage of you? Or were you pretty good about faking it till you made it?
Yeah, I think for the most part I was pretty good about being able to again just use critical thinking and understand like uh, it's pretty obvious when you see that kind of thing happening. And I'm not shy about, speaking up in that way and sticking up for myself. And yeah, I don't think anybody really like tried to take too like they didn't take advantage of me or try too hard, but there were definitely moments I feel like I just remember back, certain things happening where it's maybe how the data is presented or,
Right.
hey, this is gonna be a good move to get your price point down to here, but, um, that's really their goal, not my goal. And so, some of that, yeah, the inexperience definitely, got me in some areas where I just, I went along with certain things, but if I really felt like there was an issue with something, I wouldn't let them take advantage of me.
I always think, I don't know what they know. When you're behind that desk, like, I don't know what you have access to, what tools you have. I know we all look at spins, but I was just always looking for partnership and that sort of thing. So it was just something that I've never been, oh, this is a new buyer. Let's see what he doesn't know. Let's kind of see where we can find the holes. I've never done that. It was always like just trying to find common ground. But let me ask you though, like as your role grew, because you started off in the store, walk us through your career at New Seasons.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I started on Christmas Eve. At that point, I pretty much reset my career. I came from Thriftway previously in management role, and I started at New Seasons on the freight crew working overnight shifts. So, um, I felt very fortunate with my past experience and I was able to progress into new roles pretty quickly. So, I started off 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and then it went to like a swing shift and then a lead shift in bulk and then assistant grocery manager all within maybe less than a 2 year time period. And
Okay.
then just continued to grow into the grocery manager role. Again, kind of, I want to say maybe in that role for 3 to 5 years. And then from there, just stepped into the merchandiser role where I would help open stores. I would help with resets and any kind of reset project or new items. And again, did that for another few years and then stepped into this role here, which, at that point, I'll be honest, it was at the time not likely that I was going to get the role, and it wasn't very well kept secret.
Oh,
um,
really?
like going through the interview process.
But
Yeah.
you would never
So,
know. You would never
so
know.
I really had to fight for it. When I was doing the interview process, I gave it my all and put together proposals and just again, using critical thinking of how I would approach the role, which my experience and kind of background gave a different viewpoint to what the role could be and like how to approach it. And I think that's what ultimately gave me an edge against other people that had applied.
Yeah, well, you've been at the store level. You kinda know what's going
Yeah.
on. Your feet on the street, boots on the ground. So as your role grew, how did imposter syndrome how did it show up for you? Or do you ever remember a time where it was so prevalent, that it held you back?
Yeah. So I would say it probably wasn't that prevalent in the grocery part of it. I think when I really started feeling it as far as like getting heavy on me was when I started branching out and doing things on the side,
Okay.
especially real estate. So real estate is something that I'm, doing on the side actively. And it started off, I didn't take the easy route. I took a hard path and doing big projects on apartment buildings. And with that, there's just a lot of inexperience at the very beginning. I wasn't knowledgeable about it, but I was sharing about what I was doing and, trying to act as if I was like an expert in the area. But there was still so much that I need to learn and still do today. It's something that's always evolving. And I think when I could tell I was posting on LinkedIn or Facebook sharing about what I'm doing and like how to invest your money in certain ways to get some benefits of the real estate and bigger projects. And the biggest thing for me as far as like how it came back as imposter syndrome was that it just didn't feel genuine to me because I'd spent over 20 years in CPG and starting over with this real estate thing, like I wasn't an expert yet, but I was trying to act as if I was, and
Mhm.
it just didn't feel genuine to me. So that ultimately made kind of forced me into a shift to where I started the buyer's perspective, and I started leaning more in towards CPG because I do feel more comfortable and confident in that category, obviously. So that's where
Right.
I started pushing on that content.
Yeah, well, oh my gosh, good on you on the real estate. I lost my shirt in 2008 in real estate.
Ugh.
I mean, it is I still have nightmares about it, and honestly, it was we used a realtor that I did not feel good about, and
Mm,
I was just like, "I don't wanna do business with this person," and she pushed us into buying this house. Hey, it's our fault, we bought it, right?
sure.
But I felt like our interests weren't
In
sh those they weren't important. It was she wanted to make a sale, and we were completely stupid. We so we're like, "Oh my god, a house, and we're gonna, like, rent it out, and, all our wilderness instructor friends and blah, blah, blah," and it worked for a while until it didn't, and gosh, I hated that house. I mean, the garage wasn't even finished, and we had no money to do any sort of upgrades or
yeah.
anything. We ended up selling it. We had to do a short sale on it because, I mean,
Oh,
2008,
bummer.
2010,
Yeah,
the market was terrible, and, it was awful. And so, I mean, good for you for being able to put yourself in real estate and all that, because I do know with real estate, trust your instincts, and you gotta really do your homework and that in the
yeah,
math and the numbers, and you gotta be careful, and I haven't been back into real estate since. Yeah, so I definitely am leaning more into CPG also, it's just because it's what I know. I know counseling and that whole, like, therapy and I know CPG, so I can put that together and I can provide a service in something for the CPG community, but, I know because imposter syndrome has shown up for me many times. I mean, many times. I mean, every time I've gotten promoted, I'm huffing in a paper bag because I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, can I do this? Am I gonna get fired? If Are they gonna lay me
Oh,
off?" Because
man.
I've also experienced quite a few layoffs in this industry just because brands either run out of
Mm,
money or, at one company I was with, a very big company, every year they were laying off certain amount of people because they're a publicly traded company,
yeah.
and so I finally
So then
left.
it's just part of the norm,
Yeah, it
like the
was just
process.
yeah,
Yeah.
the process was just part of the norm, and then I got an offer from this is when I got an offer from Saint Benoit, and I was just like, "Of course I'm gonna go to Saint Benoit because if I stay here, I don't even know if I'm gonna be here in a year,"
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
going to Saint Benoit and being like, "Can I do this? Can I run this brand?" I mean, I took over from the founder and,
Yeah. Oh,
can
man.
I do this? It was a lot riding on me, and I just remember just being like, "Am I gonna get fired? Am I gonna get laid off?" Like, and it's just this constant, like, self-doubt that keeps just looping in your brain, and I finally had to tell myself, like, "Stop. What are your accomplishments? What have you done? You know enough. Just quiet the committee in your head and just shut up and get to work." You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah,
I imagine with that kind of background, going through with that company culture, that just, I mean, that's gotta make it so much more challenging to be combating that all the time. Like, it's of course, you're gonna have more experience with it than me that never really had that worry.
right. Right, and I think there's a lot of people in CPG on the other side, right, well,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of buyer layoffs too, right, with
Sure.
consolidation and that kind of thing, and, I know a lot of people in CPG just have experienced layoff after layoff, and they go to one brand, and then brand is doing a seed round, and they're raising money, and pretty soon they run out of money, and then that brand folds. I mean, we've seen it multiple times. So,
Yep.
uh, I mean, this is a whole different topic, but that imposter syndrome, every time you get hired into a new role or you step up into a new role, it decides to do jazz hands and like the imposter syndrome's like, I'm here, it's showtime, like how are you going to shut me down? And it's just, I always say like, with imposter syndrome, you really have to mentally map like your accomplishments and trust
Mhm.
yourself. So how did you get out of imposter syndrome? Like how did you talk yourself out of it?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to this one. I think
Mhm.
first and foremost, you have to really recognize that it's just part of the process and understand that when you're starting something new, you're not going to be good at it. It's going to take some time. And you might have some natural skills that maybe make you a better candidate than somebody else and all your background that you've put into it. But generally speaking, when you're moving up, you're not 100%. You're not going to be able to go all cylinders firing from day one. And
Right.
so, yeah, so that just helps me personally kind of just set the playing field and set that framework ahead of time.
Mhm.
And and then the next part of it really is like you've kind of alluded to it and you talked about it even in the definition, the evidence. You know, and I think going back to if you're feeling that, like I've had definitely days where I feel down, I don't feel accomplished enough or not motivated to do the things that I need to do and like I'm like why am I doing this? Why me?
Mhm.
And I really try to go find the evidence of why it is me. Like you don't have to be special to be able to step into any role because just like us stepping into that role, somebody else stepped into it before and they didn't know what they were doing.
Right. Oh, and they were completely successful and they didn't know what they were doing. Have you ever seen the movie The Big Sick
I haven't.
with he's a comedian, Camille Nanjami or whatever. He played in some Marvel movie too. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
um Well, he's a hilarious comedian, and it's the true story about him and how him and his wife met
Oh, okay.
and how they started dating, and then she ended up in the hospital with some terrible virus, and he meets her
Mm,
mom basically for the first time. And the mom's in the hospital, and she says about they're like, "Well, the doctors, they don't know if they should move her from one hospital to the next." And she's like, "These doctors, they don't know what they're doing." She goes, "They're winging it too. We're all winging it. They're winging it just as much as we are." And me having heart disease,
oh, yeah.
I know that to be true. Like, we're all winging it too. Like, doctors going through their mental Rolodex of what's gonna work. You as a new you're going through your mental Rolodex of what's gonna work. The guy who just got promoted from VP of sales to now CEO or whatever, they're going through theirs of what's gonna work, and we all face it.
Yeah.
And but it shows up looking like different things. So, like, this is one thing I wanna, there's 5 different types of imposter syndrome. It's called imposter phenomenon. So
Mm,
I wonder which one you are, and I'll tell you which one I am. And for
okay.
other people, they can comment on which one they think they are. So there's the perfectionist. They're always looking for things to go perfectly. Their main concern is how something is done. So a slight error or a defect is enough to classify them as a failure. So, like, they're super
Mm,
perfectionist. And if they're not super perfectionist, that's going to lead to feelings of shame or guilt. Then there's the expert, and experts have to know everything. And their main concern is about the what and the how much or the how so that they know what to do. So, even in the slightest lack of knowledge, that's just going to send them in a complete like failure spiral. And then there's the soloist, and they need to do everything alone. They don't want help from anyone. And I can see where some people can get in trouble with
mm,
this because
yeah.
we need help from everyone to be successful because we're not successful alone. It's like it's such a team effort. But the soloist is their main concern is who completes the work. And if someone helps them, they interpret it as a sign of weakness or failure. And
Mm,
then the natural genius, they aim to achieve their goals quickly and effortlessly. They begin to doubt themselves and feel very ashamed when things start to get difficult and if they can't achieve it in their first try. And then here's one that I think we might all be a little bit of these too,
yeah.
but dominant in one or two. Superman or Superwoman. The success of Superman and Superwoman is based on how many different roles they can play. They need to be the good father, the good mother, the good son,
Mm,
boss, partner, brother, manager. So all their roles have to be perfect and they always work longer. They don't take days off. We know these people. We've worked with them. And if they can't play any of these roles perfectly, they feel like a complete fraud. So I totally understand. I get that. Like I identify with Superwoman, but I also identify with the natural genius. That is one where once things start to get difficult, I start to spiral and think
yeah.
maybe I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, what if they find out? What if they find out that I wasn't good at math in high school? um, you know, that I'm a liberal studies major in college. I don't have a finance degree. So what about you? What do you think that you identify with?
Oh, man. I mean, honestly, as you read all of them, I see myself in every one of them in some regard. And I would say probably the most prevalent ones are the Superman
Mhm.
and probably the perfectionist, but I would say that I've been working intentionally on that. Like, I've been really focused on doing things and launching quickly, not focused on it being perfect, but just moving forward. So Superman probably stands out the most, especially over the last, few years as I've been doing all the things that I do with the real estate, new seasons, buyer's perspective newsletter, the community. I was doing a podcast for a little bit. I'm starting a new podcast again. Like all these different areas are definitely, pulling on me. And um, honestly, I mean, I think I'll always be the type that will not like taking breaks. I feel awkward when I'm not doing anything productive. And so I'll always have some Superman, but I think there's going to be different variations of it and how I can balance out to not make it toxic or bring me into a spiral where I'm, feeling self doubt or the imposter syndrome.
Well, think about a lot of us for CPG, a lot of us have families and we have kids, and I call it juggling the circus because
Yeah.
our lives behind the scenes, like, that life behind the laptop is a freaking bouncy house circus. It's taking kids to baseball and cheer and dance and making dinner and going to church and having, being good in your church community, or making sure you're a good husband, wife, partner, whatever that is. And it is just making sure that, a lot of us too, as we get into, middle age, a lot of us are taking care of our parents, right?
Mm,
So we're taking care of kids, taking care of the parents. We've got full-time careers that we're juggling, and we have a team, right? So it's just all these balls in the air, and why would you take a day off? There's no time to take off, right? So you're trying to be 100% in all the roles, and it's impossible, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nearly impossible. And so I can see where with the imposter syndrome, you have to tell yourself there is no humanly way that you can be 100% in all these roles all the time, because we weren't
Yeah.
designed that way. We weren't. And you're good enough, you're doing enough. Go back through the mental mapping of accomplishment mapping to say, hey, I've done all of this. Why not me? I'm good enough. I am strong enough. People like me. So what ways you talked about kind of the mapping, like accomplishment mapping, I think earlier. How do you get out, like, when you're stuck in that doubt or imposter syndrome? How do you talk yourself out of it?
So I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I take essentially a tally of, I go back and recall those pieces of evidence that I am capable of, or I am deserving or worthy of being where I'm at.
Mhm.
And there's a balance here. I think there's a mix of it that is like looking at my personal accomplishments, and then there's also just being humble and the humility of knowing that even all of the bad things that happen in my life, that like, there's a reason behind it. There's things happen for a reason, and I'm in this position because, and for me, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. Like, for me, I believe God put me in this place, and all of those
Mhm.
things prior are, if I didn't get a role that I was looking for, or I felt like I was in imposter syndrome, whatever, that's all part of this story.
Right.
So
It is.
I do have to remind myself too, like, I'm just a piece of this, and I won't ever really know the full story.
Right.
I just have to play along with it. Um, but there's the two parts. There's that, just having faith that, I'm here because, for a specific reason, but also I can look back and recall those specific instances where I have accomplished, whatever it may be, if it's a personal thing or if it's work or whatever, I can kind of recall those specific instances.
Yeah, you mentioned how, your faith in God, and how you can't see the whole story. You just have to have faith, not everything is right for us. There were two like national director positions that I had interviewed for, and I got
Mm,
very far in the interview process, like one or two, I was like this one of two candidates that they were going to
yeah.
hire. And there were 2 brands, and I didn't get either of them. And I
Mm,
remember one time just breaking down and crying because I
sure.
didn't get the position, and I was so angry and so upset because they took me through an entire process. I had to do work, I had to come up with a deck, these kind of, this kind of
Yeah.
thing, and I spent so much time. Me and the VP actually spent time over the weekend preparing together for the final interview with the
Mm,
CEO, and I was so angry. A year later, that brand was no longer, uh,
mm,
viable, right? So I would have worked there for a year and then I would have got laid off. And then the other brand that I didn't get, no longer a brand either. So thank God
Yeah.
I did not get those positions, right? You just have to have faith that
Yeah.
this is where you're supposed to be. And good things will come. I mean, so for us that believe in God, or for those of you who believe in the universe or whatever it is that you believe, you manifesting or whatever, you are where you're supposed to be and you can manifest whatever it is that's coming to you. But the things that are for you will come to you. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
let's talk tools and practices. So, what are some like practices or mindset shifts that kind of help you quiet that inner noise? Because we all have that inner noise. Mine is louder than others at times. What do you do? I mean, besides the kind of accomplishment checking, what do you do to help you kind of get out of that?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's a natural instinct for us when we start feeling this way to back off, maybe take a break, go walk it off or
Mm.
whatever. And sometimes that works for me too, but ultimately I always come back to leaning in and going in deeper or go farther into what I am having an issue with. So I just do the opposite of what the natural instinct is.
Right.
um, if I'm having a problem with, like, for example, right now, transition from a category manager to doing my own thing and having my own company, it there's definitely parts of it that, I could be having this issue with imposter syndrome, but I'm leaning into it and I'm thinking through what are the things that I would need to do on a daily basis to act as if I'm already that person that I want to be. So
Right.
I kind of work backwards on, okay, if I'm going to own my own company and I'm going to be servicing, this set of people, or I'm doing this type of project, what does that person need to do? And so I kind of do this in two ways. The first part is I do take a little bit of a break and visualization. So I do, like, I actively think about what the end result is, and I do it pretty vividly as much as I can. Sometimes it's hard to really think about through that if you've never been there. But then I take time, and right after that I think about what are the things that I need to do to get that result. So, and then I just play that through my head and I visualize me actually doing the thing. So, uh, not necessarily CPG related, but just as an example, um, when I think about, being fit and I want
Mhm.
to have a certain body fat percentage, I visualize what I would look like, how I would be acting, going to the gym, things like that. But then I even break it down to, like, it's not just the gym, it's not just the movement, it's the nutrition piece for me.
Right.
And that's what I've always had a hard time with is, whether it's portion or I just go portion size, or I go towards and lean towards items that I know are not good for me. I literally think in my head, like when I'm at a trade show dinner and dessert menu comes out, and I think about it and, like,
We've all
just
been there.
just being able to say, like, no, I'm okay. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And those types of things, like getting really granular and in visualizing it so that you can see yourself being that type of person.
I am not a fan of trade show dinners just because they completely bust the calorie bank. And I am known for going to Whole Foods and getting because for being having heart disease, I have to be really healthy
Yeah.
and I have to make the right choices. And those trade show dinners are not the
Right.
healthiest, right? And you're drinking wine, and then I mean, I don't know how much butter comes on fish, but a lot apparently. And I just always walk out of those dinners just feeling so gluttonous. So I'm known for going to Whole Foods and buying all my everything, and then going back to my room and watching a movie or something, and then just making sure I'm, like, very calculated in what I
Yeah.
need. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, like, please invite me to a trade show dinner if you want to, like, go, like, for those people listening, don't get me wrong, but when you're doing it all the time as a buyer, you get asked out all the time. I mean, I probably had more New Seasons dinners than I've had with a lot of people, and they're super fun. You guys are a great time. And, but it's just, yeah, you have to kind of take control and kind of you got to have goals and boundaries, and you can't kind of step out of them, like nutritionally anyway.
Yeah.
But you were talking about kind of being the person acting as if you're already there. So Covey, in one of the 7 habits of
Mhm.
highly successful people, is one of the habits is think with the end in mind. So when you think with the end in mind, like this is where I want to be and this is the goal, and you work backwards, right? And you
Yep.
think you're going to be way more successful when you do that. I remember when I got divorced. This is just I'm not going to get into my marriage stuff, but when I got divorced, I
This
remember,
therapy session.
yeah, right. I remember saying to myself, I want to make sure that my daughter is not the rope in a parental tug of war. And
Mm,
I'm going to have the best co parenting relationship with my ex husband. And that was the goal. And I
yeah.
worked my way back. And what did that look like? And a lot of times it wasn't always fun, but you know what? 15 years later, we have a great relation. I mean, it took a while, but we built it. And it wasn't, it wasn't easy. It was hard at times. But the end result of that is my daughter has both her parents. We spend Christmas together, Thanksgivings, like all the holidays. She has both of us. And it's been something that's been really good for our daughter, but it was because we thought with the end in mind and we made that the goal, and we carved our way, chiseled our way. And a lot of times it was hard. It wasn't always easy, right? Building anything new from scratch and rebuilding is not always easy. So that's one of my biggest accomplishments in my life has been that. But it's
No,
hard.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have
But
to think with the end of it so you gotta think with the end in mind and kind of and act like you're already there. The point is when you think with the end in mind and you act as if you're already there, you're more likely to get there faster and more effortlessly than if you didn't.
yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean, honestly, that's what I've noticed. And yeah, just being able to take that time and visualize it and then really break it down, like you said, work it
Well,
backwards. Right. If you have to write it down, write it down. If you just visualize it in your head, like what do I need to do or have those instances, like you wouldn't have known because you hadn't been through that experience. So that's one of the things that we probably all have as a challenge when we're doing this is we don't know what's going to come up. And I think maybe that is probably one of the most important things that you can visualize is when I have something come up that is unexpected, how am I going to react?
right, right, and it's so true, and because you can choose your reaction. You can
Yeah.
choose all of that. You can't
It's very
choose.
difficult sometimes, but
Oh, it's extremely difficult sometimes, trust me.
yeah.
But even like with the mindset coaching, right? In the visualizations, even like the best athletes, they have visualization coaches, mindset coaches.
Hmm.
I have a friend whose daughter plays very high level collegiate volleyball. And I mean, she's definitely a candidate that's gonna go to the Olympics probably,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, she's very high ranked, and, when she came out here, not too long ago, we saw her play against Cal Berkeley and Stanford, and she actually has a mindset coach, like a visualization coach, the whole team does,
Yeah.
and go through what the game's gonna look what the when they run into certain scenarios, and it's pretty amazing. So if these high level athletes are doing that, imagine like what that can do for us, as CPG, people in CPG, like, I'm going to meet with the buyer and I'm going to get the product on the shelf,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, yeah,
Visualize the win.
visualizing the win. But that helps you gain a lot of clarity, right? And anyway, I mean, kind of gone off on track with imposter syndrome, but all of these are tactics that you can use to kind of get out of that self-doubt spiral and that negative thinking. I had a friend that called it stinking thinking or something, right? It's just this spiral that's so unproductive. That's why I said, just remember your accomplishments and get to work,
Yeah.
get going, because the people who have put you in that position, they're excited to have you there and they're ready for you to be part of the team. So any last like advice that you would give to others or anybody in CPG that might be feeling imposter syndrome or might be facing a really tough challenge that they need to overcome?
Hmm. I think I notice this with myself a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this, but we typically are our own worst critic, and we're very critical of our own accomplishments, especially if you're a high performer and your expectation is to go into a new role or a new whatever and become great at it instantly. It's just, you might, but that expectation is setting you up for going into this spiral that Michelle was talking about. So I think it's really important just to maybe bring some people in, bring in some people that you've been close with and get advice and or at least some support on, getting those pieces of evidence that, you know, we might not be able to find them as easy because we're high performers, we're in this new role, we feel like we're not meeting the requirements or whatever it is, but there's plenty of people around you, I'm sure. I can guarantee that they are seeing what you are doing and they feel the impact of what you are doing. So getting them to help support you and not do it alone. Don't be the soloist like Michelle was calling out earlier.
Yeah, the soloist, exactly. And also, like, no, 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 you know enough. You wouldn't have
Yeah.
been given this opportunity if people didn't see the greatness in you and the accomplishments in you and the potential in you to be in that role. And they're excited for you to be in it. So,
Yeah.
well, Robert, awesome. I'm glad we had this talk of imposter syndrome. Let me just ask you one thing. As a
Yeah.
buyer, what is one piece of advice you want to give to people on your way out?
Uh, Number one thing I would say is identify the operational friction between you and your buyer. So that's all the tasks that you do that intersect between you and them
Oh, right.
and reduce it as much as you can.
The less work you give the buyer, the better. So,
It's true. Make
yeah.
it make their work easy and you'll be on top of their list.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been great to
Yeah.
have you. You guys, this is CPG Therapy, and we are out.